If Niccolò Machiavelli were alive today, you could forget the old dusty tomes and philosophical debates. He wouldn't be sitting in libraries writing books. No, the modern Machiavelli would be running empires quietly, subtly, invisibly. He wouldn't post motivational quotes on Instagram. He wouldn't post videos on YouTube seeking followers. He wouldn't care about going viral or being seen. He would operate in shadows, pulling strings behind the scenes so subtly that when you notice his influence, you'd swear it was fate itself at work. In a society obsessed with visibility, in a world addicted to constant updates and notifications, Machiavelli would dominate precisely because he is invisible. He would master what no one else seems to understand today. Power isn't about being seen. It's about being remembered. And if you want to dominate in today's world, whether in business, politics, or even social circles, understanding the psychological rules Machiavelli would apply in 2025 is essential. So, let's take a journey together through 21 rules of psychological dominance and influence, the way Machiavelli would wield them today. These aren't mere quotes or motivational fluff. These are doctrines of influence and power, forged from strategy, observation, and understanding of human nature. The kind of knowledge that turns someone from being reactive in life to being the invisible hand that shapes events. Rule 1. Always let them underestimate you. The first rule, and perhaps one of the most powerful, is deceptively simple. Always let people underestimate you. In today's world, everyone is in a rush to prove themselves. Everyone wants to be the loudest voice in the Zoom call, the first to respond to an email, the one posting achievements on LinkedIn. Everyone wants to assert dominance, flash credentials, show they are intelligent, successful, or capable. But the modern Machiavelli wouldn't do any of that. Instead, he would walk into a meeting last, observe first, speak only when it is strategically advantageous, and say what no one else dared to articulate. When you appear harmless, quiet, or even unremarkable, others expose themselves fully, revealing their weaknesses, intentions, and insecurities. In today's fast-paced, visibility-obsessed culture, your silence is not weakness. It is a strategic weapon. You create space for observation, and observation is the first step toward influence. Let people think you are inconsequential, and you control what they show, what they reveal, and eventually, you control the room without anyone realizing it until it's far too late. Rule 2. Charm is more dangerous than truth. In the hyper-connected, image-obsessed society we live in today, perception outweighs reality. Machiavelli understood that charm is more dangerous than truth. He would not waste energy proving integrity or honesty. Those are fleeting qualities in a world addicted to the optics of morality. Instead, he would cultivate the perception of goodness, competence, and charm. Think about it. In boardrooms, social networks, or political landscapes, the people who appear trustworthy, likable, or charismatic often wield far more influence than those who are merely right. Machiavelli would smile in meetings, nod when others speak, and plant seeds of misdirection subtly, disarming opponents while creating illusions that he is harmless, cooperative, or even predictable. This is not deceit for its own sake. It is leverage. Charm is a tool that allows you to manipulate outcomes without ever appearing manipulative. You don't need to be honest. You need to be persuasive. You don't need to correct people's perception of you. You need to exploit it. Rule 3. Create ambiguity on purpose. Most people live their lives trying desperately to be understood, to clarify every point, to justify every action. Machiavelli would do the opposite. He would create ambiguity, a controlled unpredictability that makes people obsessed with understanding you. One day cold, the next day generous, sometimes silent, sometimes intense. Not because he is inconsistent, but because he understands that confusion is a tool. When people cannot define you, they spend all their mental energy analyzing, interpreting, and obsessing. Obsession creates focus. Focus creates influence. Today, in an era where everyone broadcasts every thought, the person who leaves gaps becomes magnetic. Silence, ambiguity, and unpredictability are the modern Machiavellian weapons. They draw attention, encourage overthinking, and make others act according to your invisible design. Speak less, reveal selectively, and let the gaps do the psychological heavy lifting. Rule 4. Control what they see. Hide what you do. In 2025, everyone is building a personal brand. They post updates, progress reports, and every move online. Machiavelli would do the opposite. He would control what people see while keeping his actions, intentions, and strategies hidden. Transparency can be a trap. When your processes are visible, others anticipate your moves, build alliances against you, and prepare countermeasures. The modern Machiavelli would post just enough to maintain appearances, while privately controlling all the levers. He would appear slow, resting, or passive, while silently orchestrating outcomes no one anticipates. Control the narrative, control perception, and most importantly, guard the mechanisms of your success in total secrecy. Rule 5. Build a mask, then let it fracture. People rarely remember perfection, but they obsess over control flaws. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He would build a mask, confident, poised, intelligent, but occasionally allow it to fracture. A sudden insight, a carefully calculated vulnerability, a sharp word at the right moment. These glimpses of imperfection make people curious, make them fixate, make them remember. In today's world, where everyone tries to appear flawless online, controlled imperfection becomes irresistible. Give people most of the story, but leave a gap. They will chase the rest endlessly. The key is not be loved. It is to be unforgettable. Rule 6. Say less than necessary. Words are weapons when wielded correctly. Most people wield them carelessly. Machiavelli would speak sparingly, only to create distance and mystery. In negotiations, disagreements, or high-stakes moments, he would say precisely enough to assert influence and then stop. Silence forces projection. People fill the void with assumptions, doubts, and fears, all of which you control. In a society addicted to constant commentary and digital noise, the person who speaks least dominates because others overcompensate in their attempts to interpret and predict. Rule 7. Blur the line between threat and ally. In today's world, people are obsessed with certainty. They want to know who is friend, who is foe, who can be trusted, and who poses danger. Machiavelli would do the opposite. He would blur these lines intentionally, creating a web of uncertainty that keeps others off balance and constantly second-guessing their own actions. He would dine with enemies, compliment rivals publicly, defend potential adversaries privately, and agree with critics just before executing plans that leave them vulnerable. By creating ambiguity about his intentions, he ensures that others are perpetually cautious, hesitant, and reactive. The modern Machiavelli understands that a lion cannot defend against all the traps laid by foxes, and a fox cannot survive if the wolves see it coming. He would embody both simultaneously, appearing neutral while quietly maneuvering the board, creating an environment where no one can prepare for moves they cannot anticipate, making them vulnerable to subtle domination without ever realizing who is in control until it's far too late. Rule 8. Make them feel safe before you take power. The most effective domination is never achieved through direct confrontation or force. It is achieved by creating a sense of trust and safety, only to strike when that trust becomes complete dependence. Machiavelli would carefully observe patterns, mimic language, mirror behavior, and praise ideas in a way that subtly encourages others to believe that he is on their side, that he is cooperative, and that his interests align perfectly with theirs. Once he has established a sense of safety and control, he moves decisively, quietly, and flawlessly. By the time the other party realizes they've been outmaneuvered, they are already displaced, their influence nullified, and Machiavelli is firmly seated in the position they believed was secure. In today's corporate world, social arenas, or political systems, this rule translates into psychological infiltration. Make people trust you, make them believe they are guiding you, and then take the position they never imagined you could occupy, leaving them to wonder where it all went wrong. Rule 9. Make people dependent, then remove yourself. Dependency is the invisible chain that binds people to power. Machiavelli understood that no one resents being controlled as much as they resent losing something they never realized they depended on. In practice, he would become indispensable to others, solving problems no one else could, providing guidance, stability, or knowledge that appears effortless, and then at the height of their reliance, he would withdraw silently. The absence creates chaos, anxiety, and obsession. People begin to realize how much they relied on him without acknowledgement, and this psychological imbalance ensures that the power dynamics remain heavily tilted in his favor, even when he is no longer present. In today's interconnected, collaborative environments, the person who can subtly create dependence without appearing controlling wields a silent authority that lasts long after they step away, because humans instinctively cling to what they cannot replace. Rule 10. Weaponize a favor. Most people offer help to be liked or to appear generous, but Machiavelli weaponized favor to create long-term leverage. He would give assistance, opportunities, or insights without asking for immediate reciprocation, allowing the recipient to feel indebted in ways they could not measure or easily repay. Over time, this creates a psychological imbalance where they're compelled to repay, often in loyalty, secrecy, or compliance. The key is patience. The favor is planted like a seed that grows in the recipient's mind, slowly shaping their decisions, allegiances, and priorities. In today's professional world, where relationships are often transactional, the subtle use of favors as leverage becomes a silent mechanism of power, one that ensures influence without confrontation and compliance without coercion. Rule 11. Manufacture loyalty by letting them betray others for you. Loyalty is rarely earned through kindness or charisma alone. Machiavelli knew that the strongest bonds of allegiance arise from complicity, from shared secrecy, and from investment in a cause that risks moral compromise. In practice, he would position people to betray others subtly. Let them speak against a rival, break minor rules for you, or divulge secrets they should not. They do it voluntarily, believing it is their choice. Yet in doing so, they are now psychologically tied to you. Once they invest in this way, they cannot easily walk away. They have compromised, and in human nature, what is invested becomes protected. Modern Machiavelli would exploit this principle by allowing loyalty to grow organically from calculated entanglements, ensuring that those around him are bound not by admiration alone, but by the subtle chains of complicity, creating followers who are psychologically committed to supporting his vision, because walking away feels like self-sabotage. Rule 12. Break alliances from the inside. Machiavelli didn't just dominate individuals. He dismantled networks. But he did it without confrontation, without overt aggression. Instead, he infiltrated alliances, planting seeds of doubt, subtle misalignments, and whispered observations that slowly eroded trust. He would never destroy an alliance with brute force. He would allow the members to dismantle it themselves, using their own fears, suspicions, and insecurities against them. In the modern world, where collaborations, partnership, and networks dominate success, this technique is especially effective. By strategically planting doubt and subtly shifting perceptions, the Machiavellian strategist creates internal collapse, leaving the structure weakened, fractured, or entirely dysfunctional, all while remaining above suspicion, maintaining influence, and positioning himself as the inevitable alternative that emerges from the chaos. Rule 13. Reflect their insecurities back at them. Machiavelli understood that threats and intimidation only trigger defense mechanisms, but insecurities create subtle, voluntary submission. If you want someone to follow you without realizing it, you must mirror their vulnerabilities, validate their doubts, and reinforce the narrative they already hold about themselves, all without insult or direct critique. He would compliment a hesitant employee by acknowledging the courage it took to act despite self-doubt, praise a rival's intelligence in a way that simultaneously amplifies their reliance on him, or subtly highlight how someone's progress is impressive for their level, which both flatters and reinforces their perceived limitations. In modern professional and social contexts, this principle is incredibly powerful. People are drawn to those who understand them, and once you anchor yourself as the only person who truly sees them, they begin to defer, comply, and align without overt coercion. This is psychological gravity. Once they attach to your perception of them, you subtly steer their actions while they remain convinced they are acting autonomously. Rule 14. Never be the one holding the knife. In any confrontation or act of removal, Machiavelli never exposed himself as the executioner. He orchestrated outcomes, influenced decisions, and provoked actions without ever being directly implicated, allowing others to destroy themselves while he remained untouchable. The brilliance of this tactic lies in perception. The moment you are seen holding the weapon, you acquire enemies. But when destruction appears inevitable due to circumstances you engineered invisibly, you gain followers, respect, and dominance without personal risk. In the modern era, Whether it's corporate restructuring, political maneuvering, or social influence, the person who manipulates outcomes without appearing to do so wields unparalleled power. You orchestrate, you influence, you provoke, but your hands remain clean, and by the time others realize what has happened, you're already seated in a position of control, untouchable and unquestioned. Rule 15. Say nothing and let them reveal everything. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest, most assertive, or most flamboyant. It's the one who speaks least and observes everything. Silence is a weapon disguised as passivity, and Machiavelli understood that people reveal more when they believe they are leading the conversation. In modern social and professional environments, filled with oversharing, constant commentary, and compulsive online updates, the silent observer dominates because others project, interpret, and overexpose themselves. A simple pause when insulted, a calm smile when provoked, or a lack of immediate response to a challenge forces the opposition to reveal intentions, vulnerabilities, and strategies without realizing they've been manipulated. Silence, in this sense, becomes an elegant form of psychological deception. The more they speak, the more they're controlled, and the more information you gather without uttering a single word that could betray your own position. Rule 16. Be unpredictable, but only when it matters. Predictability is a weakness in a world where manipulation and strategy are constant. Machiavelli would never be erratic, but he would deliberately withhold responses, fluctuating attention, or vary engagement when it mattered most, creating uncertainty that generates fear and respect simultaneously. If others can predict your reaction to stress, provocation, or negotiation, they can manipulate your rhythm, tempo, and decisions. But if you strategically forgive sometimes, disappear other times, and oscillate between engagement and observation, you become unreadable. Human behavior is often guided by two primary forces, love and fear. But fear, born from uncertainty, is the more potent of the two. The person who cannot be predicted commands influence because no one knows how to counteract them. In a modern context, this principle allows leaders, influencers, or even social strategists to maintain dominance simply by being selectively elusive, strategically inconsistent, and impossible to categorize. Rule 17. Make your presence felt even in absence. Psychological dominance isn't always about constant visibility. It's about leaving an imprint that endures even when you are gone. Machiavelli would make people feel his influence long after he exited the room. This is accomplished by being the standard against which all others are measured. Your decisions, precision, and judgment create benchmarks that linger. People second-guess themselves because they remember your exacting standards, hesitate to act without your approval, and unconsciously structure their behavior according to the memory of your control. In today's social, professional, and digital arenas, presence is energy, not mere physicality. Influence is felt in the gap you leave behind. The subtle vacuum of competence, judgment, and authority that makes your absence almost palpable. Those who once interacted with you continue to operate under your silent guidance, ensuring that your legacy of control persists far beyond immediate observation. Rule 18. Never threaten. Let fear do the work. Explicit threats create resistance, rebellion, and open conflict. Machiavelli understood that the more powerful strategy is to cultivate fear indirectly, through imagination and uncertainty. The knowledge that someone might act against you, without explicit declaration, is infinitely more destabilizing than overt aggression. A glance, a pause, a single phone call that hints at hidden influence can create anxiety, second-guessing, and compliance far more effectively than any shouted ultimatum. In today's interconnected, information-saturated environment, the silent, subtle manipulator leverages anticipation, uncertainty, and perception to control outcomes. People begin to preemptively align their behavior, adjust their decisions, and strive for approval. Not because they're forced, but because they are subtly coerced by the invisible threat that never fully materializes. Rule 19. Delay your revenge until it becomes devastating. Machiavelli understood that retaliation is most effective when it is patient, calculated, and complete, rather than immediate and emotional. Quick responses allow the other party to set the tempo, anticipate your reaction, or even exploit your visible anger. The modern Machiavelli waits, studies, and lets the offense linger, allowing the offender to relax and believe they have escaped unscathed, while paranoia and insecurity quietly take root in their mind. Then, When the moment is perfect, he strikes decisively with precision and finality, leaving no room for recovery, no opportunity for counteraction, and no doubt that the outcome was orchestrated perfectly. In today's high-stakes environments, whether in business rivalries, social hierarchies, or political maneuvering, the art of delayed revenge magnifies control, extends fear, and ensures that those who wronged you are mentally trapped by their own overconfidence, never fully recovering from the psychological impact of your strategic patience. Rule 20. Become a system, not a man. Influence that endures is not about charm, charisma, or personal popularity. It is about embedding yourself into structures, processes, and systems that outlast your immediate presence. Machiavelli would focus on making himself indispensable, not merely admired, by ensuring that decisions, workflows, and mental frameworks are aligned with his influence. By training others to think like him, establishing methods that rely on his guidance, and creating protocols that depend on his insight, he becomes less of an individual and more of a mechanism that shapes outcomes automatically. In today's complex organizations, digital networks, or social movements, this principle translates into creating enduring psychological and operational frameworks. People cannot remove you without dismantling the very systems that maintain their progress. And in doing so, your power becomes structural, permanent, and nearly untouchable. You are no longer a person. They cannot function without the ecosystem you engineered, which ensures that your influence persists regardless of physical presence, popularity, or immediate recognition. Rule 21. Make them afraid to speak your name. The pinnacle of Machiavellian power is not recognition, admiration, or notoriety. It is haunting influence, the kind of psychological control that lingers in the minds of others even in your absence. Machiavelli would ensure that your name is invoked indirectly, referenced cautiously, or mentioned with hesitation, because speaking it carries a weight, an implication, or a consequence that others instinctively respect or fear. In today's world, where visibility is often mistaken for influence, the truly powerful do not seek attention. They shape perceptions and narratives so subtly that people fear misrepresentation, overexposure, or unintended consequences simply by acknowledging your presence. By positioning yourself as an unavoidable psychological force, you shift the dynamic. You do not need to dominate conversations, trends, or arguments. Instead, your influence shapes the environment, controls the narrative, and ensures compliance through a combination of respect, fear, and the subtle anticipation of your unseen strategies. To wield this level of power is to exist as a ghost in the system, felt in every decision, considered in every move, and remembered long after your direct engagement has ended. Conclusion: the modern Machiavelli. If Machiavelli were alive today, he would not be fighting for likes, followers, or public validation. He would not be tweeting clever quotes or posting motivational videos on TikTok. He would operate silently, strategically, and invisibly, pulling strings in ways that few could trace and even fewer could predict. The 21 rules outlined above form a blueprint not just for personal power, but for enduring psychological influence in a world that values visibility over substance. Power is not in being seen. It is in being remembered, in being essential, and in being an invisible force that shapes outcomes without apparent effort. In a modern context, this means strategically managing perception, creating psychological dependency, embedding yourself into systems, orchestrating influence from the shadows, and leaving a lasting imprint that persists far beyond your presence. To follow these principles is not to act maliciously for its own sake, but understand the dynamics of human behavior, the psychology of control, and the mechanics of influence, ensuring that your actions yield results that are both profound and enduring. If you internalize these rules and apply them intelligently, you will not merely navigate the world, you will shape it. You will not chase recognition or temporary dominance. You will create a legacy of influence that is subtle, powerful, and inescapable. The modern Machiavelli is not loud, visible, or flashy. He is precise, patient, and invisible, leaving everyone else to chase shadows while he quietly designs reality itself. By mastering these 21 rules, you gain the keys not just to power, but to a form of control that transcends traditional measures, allowing you to operate above the noise, beyond the chaos, and in a position of psychological authority that few will ever question or resist.